Hello and welcome to Vote 2010, the race for governor. I'm Suzanne Boyd and we are coming to you live from the Church of All Nations. Now, I'm going to be moderating this debate with the pastor here at Church of All Nations, Pastor Mark Boykin. And we want to make this clear, this is not a debate.
That's right.
This is a forum. And from what we've seen in the past couple of days, it's probably a good thing.
Probably, yes.
This is going to be like an interview-style forum. We're going to have the candidates come out one by one, ask them nearly identical questions back to back, and then, of course, we're going to have follow-ups depending on their answers as well. And so let's go ahead and meet the candidates.
Yes.
Now, Alex Sink was extended an invitation to tonight's forum, but she did decline, and it's also important to note that Rick Scott did confirm that he would be here tonight, but at the last minute has backed out. It's also important to note that there is no incumbent in this race because our current governor, Charlie Crist, is running for the U.S. Senate. Now, each of the candidates will be appearing in alphabetical order. They will each get 11 minutes, so let's get started. Please welcome Bud Childs. Thank you for being here. All right, the first topic, the economy, what everyone wants to know about. You know, Florida's unemployment rate right now is, I think, 11.5%. Here in Palm Beach County, it's even worse. What is your plan to jumpstart the economy and get Floridians back to work?
I'm glad we're starting with that question because I think it's the most important issue facing the state of Florida today. We do have 1 million people out of work, and half of the people that are working in Florida today are not making enough to get above the poverty line and take care of their children and their families. I think that we've got to start with the foundational things, which is education and health care, and we've got to start early in terms of making sure that our kids are healthy when they arrive in first grade, having a quality pre-K program, and an excellent K-12 education. Unfortunately, in the last 10 years, we've gone very much backwards in terms of our health and education for our children. We rank near the bottom in those categories. That has to be fixed. That will be a priority as governor. We've got special interests in Florida that are blocking our ability to move forward with jobs. I'm a candidate in this race that's not beholden to the utilities or the banks or the insurance companies or the parties for the money that's controlling the process and keeping us from moving forward on education, on health care, and on jobs. Let me give you an example. In Florida, we can create tens of thousands of green jobs by getting serious about energy and conservation. What better time now? We have 200,000 gallons of oil floating in our Gulf, affecting our very way of life, than us to get serious about moving forward with green energy, with solar, with wind, with biodiesel. We've got sorghum, we've got sugarcane, we've got algae. There are tremendous opportunities for Florida, but we're not doing it because the utilities are putting $2 million into the election coffers every year of the parties. I'm not accepting that money. I won't play that game. We've got to get serious about Florida's economy. And we've got to build jobs, and we can do it by standing up to the people that are, the few that are getting most of the spoils, and take care of the many middle class that are falling out of the middle class, and those that are in the lower middle class that are wanting to go into the middle class. They need better education, they need better health care, and the jobs of the future.
Mr. Childs, since you brought up education, I do want to ask you about that. The class size amendment actually kicks in this year in Florida, and it forces public schools, as you know, to meet very strict limits on those core subject classes. Many of these school districts say they simply can't afford it. So how do you resolve that? They're being forced into something that they can't afford.
You know, we've got to fundamentally change education in the state. It's sad for me to say, and I've spent 300 miles following the route that my father walked to some extent, trying to educate Floridians how important, as chairman of the Lawton Childs Foundation and later as a candidate, how important it is for us to realize that the indicators of our child education and our health care have fallen so low. We have 104,000 people that are not graduating high school. 40% of our kids can't read at grade level. We are 49th or 48th in terms of the health indicators for our children. The class size amendment was something that the people of Florida voted on, and it was ignored by two governors. To institute the class size amendment. Now we've got an amendment on the ballot to change it because we didn't move forward and do it. We've got to make education a priority in this state. It's foundational for our economy. It's foundational for our future. Otherwise, we're going to continue to invest in failure, which is our most expensive program, our prison program, where we are 16th in prison and we're 49th in education. That's got to change. That will change when I'm governor.
Mr. Childs, let me just follow up on that question. I know you're talking about green energy, alternative energy, you're talking about education, and that's noble and that's fine, and that may be for tomorrow, but what about the jobs that, the abysmal jobs right now in Palm Beach County as well as Florida? It's just not very hopeful. What would you do now to jumpstart the economy? People are without work.
So, several things. One is I would create immediately as governor a $100 million revolving loan fund. Small businesses in our state are losing jobs left and right. We can't afford to have more small business shutter or they'll lose employees. That's the engine of our growth, and we've got to protect that. Way too many special exemptions and spoils have gone to large corporations in this state. $35 billion in the last 15 years has gone out in special exemptions. Everybody needs to pay a fair share so we can afford to invest in what I think is the engine of our economy, which is small business. I would create a revolving loan fund. I would use the pension and profit sharing plan of the state of Florida. As governor, I'm entitled to invest up to $2 billion in Florida innovative industries.
But what about the regulations? It seems like every time a small business gets going, they're stuck with more regulations.
That's true.
And how do you square that? Because on one side, yes, the small businesses are the mother's milk for the economy, but it seems every time they get up and running, there's another regulation that comes out of Washington. So how do you answer that?
I totally agree with that. I've talked to many small businesses that are they've had it with the levels of regulation in this state. And the problem in Florida is we've gone to a top-down system. We've got a top-down system with the FCAT in education. We've got a top-down system in healthcare. We've got a top-down system in terms of our regulatory environment. It's not working. I would do regulation at the regional and local level. I would push growth management and those decisions about permitting to local people and local regions, like we do with the MPOs, the Transportation Authority, or the Water Management Districts. Local people in South Florida know what's right and fair for their district. It's different from here than from Tampa Bay. It's different in Pensacola. I don't believe in top-down. I believe in reforming our government to where we can get a sustainable government. But
what about the taxing of the middle class, though? That seems to be the question that many will not answer. How would you answer that? Would you make a promise? Yeah.
Taxing the middle class. The middle class is paying 4 times as much tax as they should today. The lower middle class is paying 8 times, but I'm talking about against the top 1% of the earners. That's how egregiously wrong our tax system has become. It was bad 10 years ago. It's gotten worse as a result of the last 10 years. We need a fair tax system, one where everyone pays their fair share. As I said, $35 billion of exemptions and special benefits have gone out to people that write large checks. I'm not taking those large checks, and I'll make the tax system fair. It's got to be transformed.
How are you going to do that? You're going to make it fair. How?
Well, the way I'm going to get elected is because the people have had it with the government that is not on their side. Yes. It's on their back.
Yes.
And all over the state, people are frustrated and mad and cynical because they're not inspired by their government, because they see that the people that write the big checks get the spoils. And so, with the power of people, we're going to transform this government, and we have to. We cannot continue to build a future on a tax system that was crafted in the 1940s and made worse in the last 10 years because of special failures.
Okay.
Let's move on to healthcare. This week, Missouri sent a very clear message against the federal government's new mandate on healthcare, the healthcare reform law. What is your opinion of that?
The federal healthcare law.
The federal healthcare law and the states actually voting against it.
Well, I think it's a waste of our time and money it's jousting at windmills to go against it. It's federal law now and it's set. It's not how I would have done it. I don't believe in top-down. I believe in bottom-up. I think the solutions to healthcare are complex, and we find those solutions in our communities. We see it with faith-based organizations and community groups working together on interventions, pulling kids out of foster situations or out of public housing situations and getting them those interventions they need. That can't be done at a Washington bureaucratic or a Tallahassee bureaucratic level. Our public health system in Florida is broken, and it needs to be fixed, but it needs to be bottomed up and not top down.
One last question that I think it's the elephant in the room that no one has talked about yet, and that is the immigration reform, or if you would like to describe it, the Arizona law. What is your position on that? Would you be foursquare against it? Would you embrace the Arizona law or something similar to that coming to Florida?
Well, let's understand on immigration, and I know this is a very emotional issue right now, but let's understand that as governor, I don't have a Coast Guard or a Border Patrol. That's the federal government's responsibility. This is a national issue. We have a national law. The problem is that we are not enforcing the national law. As governor, what I have to do is demand that the federal government protect our border. We are as vulnerable as Arizona. We have a big coastline.
Yes.
We've seen these problems in the past with Cuba. And with
But we're not Arizona. Arizona is contiguous with Mexico, as you were saying, and I'm not trying to trip up what you're saying. I would agree with you. We do not have a land base that's contiguous with another country. So aren't our problems different than Arizona's?
No, it's very different from Arizona, but we still, as governor, we need a governor that's going to demand the federal government uphold the law. If we want to change the law, let's change the law. But as long as we've got a law on the books, we need to uphold the law, which is that if you're here illegally, then the law says that you need to be deported. And that's a responsibility. If we pass an Arizona law in Florida, let me tell you something right now. What we're going to be saddled with is we're going to go arrest a lot of people that are going to end up in our jails, and we're going to pay for it until they get deported. So that's going to become an economic problem for Florida. I am not for a bill that arrests people because of the way they look.
Yes.
I'm for the federal government enforcing its law and forcing them to do that as governor and to pay for any problems that creates for the state of Florida.
All right, Bud Childs, ladies and gentlemen, we will hear a lot more from you coming up in our lightning round. And coming up next, Attorney General Bill McCollum. Stay with us.
Thank you, Bud.
Thank you.